Welcome back to the next part of this quick tip series. We will continue going over the angular animations. The last time we have taken a look onto the fade animation, on the slide animations, and looked on the stagger animations. Today we will take a look onto the road transitionings in first place and then go over the rest of the examples. Here it's kind of a reminder for me, because as you can see, if you're switching between the tabs, the URL changes, and in Angular we have the router that allows us to making this mappings from a route to a component. And if we take a look into the showcase element, that's kind of a wrapper with the navigation elements that we have here on the top, and a content with an router outlet here. And what we can do here, similarly like the other examples, we can make a router animations, and because it's not completely equally to the other one with enter and leave, we has to kind of defining or help the Angular project or the component to understand when an animations happen or should happen. And what we can do here is we using a route animation that's defined here. And what it says is it has a translation from one state to another, independent how the states are named. And we're starting with a positioning relative, and each time an element enters or leaves, it should use that styling as a base, because we changing an element from relative to absolute. That's important. And then what we are doing is we changing for the enter the transform to Y20 and the opacity to 0. This query here is for entering. It's like an overwritten initial real value that we for entering. If the new route element appears, it should be transformed by Y20 pixels and then popping up to the top. And what we here have now is that we have a group. That means that everything that we are defining in the group should run parallelly. That's important because we want that both components overlapping. If you're looking here, you see that the last one going to the top and the other one comes from the bottom. And if an element leaves, it should go to translate -20, and if it enters, it should animate to translate Y0. And yeah, that's the kind of magic. As I said, it's important that we have here a function, because it should know about a change of the route. And here we having a prepare route, and yeah, you have to kind of look if the outlet is activated. But what happens here is that you need a key or something that represents a state, and the animation then seeing, oh, okay, it changed from this URL to another one. That means it has to run this animation. Yeah. Okay, let us continue with the flip card. Relatively easy, but it's kind of eventually helpful. Okay, the flip card animation, it's an HTML element that has a front and a back, and we have here a toggle flip. And now it's similarly like the routing thing, we're using own states. That means here we have this click button with a toggle flip, and we have here a flip state that represents the card state. And this card state gets changed when you're clicking on the card. This flip animation is relatively easy. Where on the state front, it should have to transform rotate y 0. If we like currently on the back, it should have to transform rotate 118 degree. That means it defining like two states of this CSS property of the rotate y or of the transform property. And then we can say, okay, we want transitionings between that both, and can then define that because we already have defined these states, that it should like switching between the front and the back. And if it was back before and goes to front, it should make also an animation between the states. If we're moving one of them and starting it, you see like that there's only one animation. Because with this you're defining that the states like should animate from one to another. Okay, then let us continue with the expandable panel. The expandable panel is more or less like only be like, it's similarly like the flip card. We have here a panel head with a title, and then we have here a minus or plus icon for opening or closing, and we have here like a direct setting based on is expanded. It sets it to expanded or collapsed, and then these animations that we have here, like saying it have a state collapsed, it have a state expanded. What is changed here is that the height you can set to a star. That means that here it should use the property that you have defined in your own CSS. And then it should have a transitioning in both directions. That's also possible other than the flip card, where we have like said from front to back and from back to front. You can also say it goes in both directions. And yeah, that's kind of all. It kind of like using then the height of the container, kind of the auto, and if it is closed, use the height of 0. And lastly, we will go over like animations we already know, but there is also a possibility for saying we want to see the element 13, and you see that there's kind of like a filtering mechanism that we want to migrate. You are a front-end developer working with Angular. I've created a course for everyone wanting the latest info on Angular 17 and 18. It covers built-in control flow, standalone components, signals, migrating to Angular 17, and building an app from scratch. The course is in the description. And I'm trying to only go over this because you already should know how this add and removing works, where it like pops up and disappearing. Okay, then we go over the animation list. Here we have a search, and we have a search term, and here we have a filter animation. And what the filter animation now does, as you can see here, we have a transition state that is named increment. That means it should use this animation when a counter increases. Here in that example we have a filtered item length. That means if the property here changes, it should look if the old value is smaller or bigger. In that example, when it is bigger, it should set for new elements the space styling and use a stagger animation to like animate it to the original CSS values, and also make the opacity to 1 and the transform to translate x0. And also we have an animation for decrement, where we kind of make the sleeve animation also staggered. The important thing here is that we're setting here also the padding and margins to 0, because otherwise you will have a jump. But here we kind of can search for 20, and because the elements completely go to height 0 and have no margins and no padding, they, kind of, it looks like that the element get animated to the top, but because the elements above have no margins and paddings and height, it kind of, goes the normal flow with this. Yeah, that's kind of all. I hope you liked the video and subscribed, and hopefully I see you in the next video.